And welcome back to Washington Commanders Insider. Today, we're talking about the Washington Commanders versus the New England Patriots joint practice. And so we'll be looking at the key takeaways from today. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to hit that subscribe button, just like Jaden Daniels is going to be hitting. Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel, Zach Ertz, and many others for multiple touchdowns this upcoming season. And so in exchange for hitting that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Washington Commanders. And so make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Washington Commanders Insider family as we talk nothing but Washington Commanders football. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it. And let's start talking about the Commanders versus the Patriots joint practice here. And so always like to start off with Dan Quinn and what he has to say to the press here before practices. And so this is DQ and just talking about the key points out of what he said. And so just paraphrasing this. And so the first thing that he talks about in his press conference before practice is the injuries. And so it looks like that Brandon Coleman, Marcus Mariota, you had Jordan McGee, Noah Brown, Terry McLaurin, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, and then Sam Cosmi were all out due to injury. And so we knew with Sam Cosmi and then also to Terry McLaurin that both of those players were out. But then, to hear a little bit of an update here with Brandon Coleman, him being out, Jordan McGee had been absent, I believe, the last couple practices. Noah Brown, we've talked about him a little bit over the last couple shows, and it looks like that they are going to continue to ramp him up. In fact, one of the things that Dan Quinn talks about with him is that they are doing a bit of a slow ramp up for him. And really, he said with, the wide receivers, and he said this before with Terry McLaurin, it's all about the deceleration out of those routes. And so being able to decelerate and then pick up speed, if you're coming back for a comeback route or something like that. And so Dan Quinn has said that, and he actually mentioned that with Marcus Mariota. The one thing that he says here is that it sounds like he's dealing with a little lower leg strain, and he's saying about 7 to 10 days. And so nothing long term. And it looks like that the Commanders are just taking the biggest caution here, with these injuries early. And so that is the update with the players that did not participate in the joint practice today. The next thing that Dan Quinn talks about is evaluations. And so he wanted to go ahead and just set the expectations with what you would see out there. And so he says that some play a lot in practice and then none in the game. And then he said that there were going to be some that were going to be limited in the practice, but would play a lot in the game. And so that was kind of an indicator as to who was going to get a lot of reps here coming up for the preseason game. And so we'll talk about that in a moment when we start to look at the standouts and things like that. But that was the expectation going into practice. Next thing he talks about, or he's asked about, is the rookies. And so he said, for the rookies, it's going to be their first preseason game. He wanted to remind them that, hey, you have been going against NFL players, which is true. But, hey, it's one thing to go against players in practice when it's a controlled environment, but it is another thing when the lights are on, the crowd is out there, refs out there, like it is game on. And so, for the rookies out there, I can imagine it's going to be exciting for them to get into their first preseason action. Some of the things that Dan Quinn said that he's looking for, wants to see the linebackers tackle. He wanted to see people guard. So that's some of the things that he was looking forward to seeing going into this. He also talks about padded practices a little bit. Again, he says that, some of the padded practices have more value in certain positions, which he said that before, when he was talking about the running backs and just being able to say, okay, can you run through the contact, things like that, angles. He's talking about the line to scrimmage and how that changes when you put the pads on. So I imagine that's probably what he was going with right there when he was talking about how padded practices have more value at certain positions and when you're looking to evaluate that. Next thing, he wanted to emphasize that, look, they're customizing, the reps here for the joint practices. And so that's why, going back to some of the things that he was saying there earlier with, some will play a lot in the practice, some won't. And so just going ahead and coming up with the plan for each specific player, which that is something that Dan Quinn has talked about a lot. The next thing that he talks about here, is that he's talking about Jonathan Jones and then also to Dietrich Wise. He talked about how just really they have brought their standard here to this team. and it just really has helped lifted the team. And so that kind of goes into a point that I just feel like is very important when you're trying to become a winner. When you're bringing in players that have won at a high level, I do think that that is a factor on any team in any sport. I don't care what it is, whether it's football, baseball, track and field, whatever. When you bring players in that have done it at a high level and have just really they've won, that it's almost like it's something that you just want to. It just rubs off, I think, on the rest of the team. And so, talking about Jonathan Jones and Dietrich Wise, it just reminds me of the good mix of veterans that are on the Commanders to go along with this young team and why they're in a good position as they continue to ramp up here for the season. And so, next thing, too, he talks about with Jonathan Jones, he said that his speed has stood out and just being able to stay attached to the man that he's guarding out there. So, Jonathan Jones, he gives him a little bit of praise there. And so, next, I wanted to go ahead and jump into the key standouts, from this joint practice today. And so we're going to go through this. We're going to take a look at just breaking it down from just who came to the practice. We're going to talk about, standouts, rookies, all that stuff like that. So here we go. And so if you guys want to read about some of this, you can go over to Hogs Haven, and you can actually see some of the posts here that were tweets and videos, and you can see the vast majority of this stuff. And so I did get a chance to look at some other sources too. And so let's go ahead and start just with the players, or not the players, but the star power that was out there. And so it looks like that Jason Tatum and then Bon Jovi came out to practice. And so that is something to note here as far as stars coming out to the practice. Next thing, starting with just standouts. And so with Jaden Daniels was awfully sharp. And so from what I'm seeing here, Jaden Daniels was throwing some dimes out there to some people. And so just showing just how special he is and just why we're glad he's our franchise quarterback. But one of the things that came up that I saw is that he just really had a good connection with Zach Ertz. And so that connection was there doing 11-on-11s. And so that was a standout there. Sticking with the quarterbacks, you had Josh Johnson, I believe, that ended practice with a TD to Jones there. So Jacoby Jones, I believe. And so that was good to see that the Commanders finished on a high note. Another thing, too, as far as going back to Jaden Daniels. And so it looks like that he hit Luke McCaffrey, who made a very nice toe tap type of TD catch as well. And so that was one of the highlights as well. Next thing, too, just going back into Zach Ertz. And so, from what I'm seeing with Zach Ertz was the real deal Holyfield out there. I think he was just making plays, and it just seems like the connection between Jaden Daniels and Zach Ertz is real, and perhaps it might even be better than what it was a season before. So that is a key highlight here, is that Zach Ertz is already onto the same page as Jaden Daniels. And so a very good day for him. Next up, sticking with players that are veterans that had a good day. And so it looks like that Laramie Tunsil had a good day here. So I guess in looking at Laramie Tunsil like put one player just pretty much on their butt, I believe, in a pass protection. And then also, too, I think that there was a run play where Laramie Tunsil just got after somebody as well. So Laramie Tunsil showing exactly why he is a Pro Bowler and an All-Pro player. And, man, it looks like that the Commanders definitely hit on this trade. So Laramie Tunsil looking awfully good. Another player that looked good as far as just coming back that is a veteran here was Brian Robinson. So Brian Robinson, from what I see, it looks like that he had some good runs, and he was really trying to hype up the huddle and teammates there. And so brought a ton of energy. Looks like that he definitely showed why he is RB1. And so it looks like that B-Rob had a very good day there. Next up, Jaden Daniels, going back to him. And so Jaden Daniels was able to, I guess, get a highlight here to Deebo Samuel. And so it looks like that he caught a football over Marcus Jones, and it was a toe touch TD for Deebo Samuel, and he showed his strength by ripping the football out of that. And so Deebo Samuel and Jaden Daniels continuing that connection. So that was good to hear. And then next thing here, just going into the rookies. And so starting with Trey Amos. And so Trey Amos, definitely a guy that I wanted to see here. And I just wanted to see, hey, does it translate for him? Because we know coming in, cornerback, how tough it's going to be. And so looks like that he was good to go on his jams. and he was able to keep up with Stephon Diggs. And so that was a question that I had here about Trey Amos. Could he stick with Stephon Diggs? And so it looks like that he was able to do so. And also, too, he was good as far as getting his hands in for pass breakups, which is great, too, because it's not always about turning the football over. You're getting the turnover, I should say, but the fact that you're able to get those deflections in there, that is always going to be huge. And so the fact that he has the presence of mind to get his head around and get his body in position to make a play on the football, that is great to see, for your rookie corner, that I think that they are definitely going to go ahead and start him here. And so let's see what happens as he goes through preseason. But man, it sounds like that he had a very good productive play or productive day here in joint practice. And so the next rookie that I want to talk about here is Josh Conley Jr. And so it looks like that Josh Conley Jr., from what I'm seeing from him, and the one thing that sticks out of his notes is just, I think, gamer, because we've been talking about him against Von Miller and these guys at practice. And it looks like that Von Miller and these guys have been winning a lot of the battles and things like that, but he's hanging in there. But today, it looks like that he had a very solid practice. And so it looks like that he looked good versus the stunts and the looping players out there. And so he was able to put his foot in the ground and get to those directions and stop players from getting through or getting the chip that he needed to slow them down. And so Josh Conley Jr., man, he definitely is showing that he's a gamer here, because look, it's one thing when you're going against your team, okay, and you're taking your licks there, but the fact that he was able to come out here against the Patriots, you're getting different looks that you haven't seen from your team and everything else. And so for him to make that adjustment like that, this is a very, very good sign here for Josh Conley Jr. And so let's see if he can continue to trend with this. But so far, man, he did a great job as far as holding up against the blitz, against Landry as a player that was coming at him. And so talking about Harold Landry of the Titans. And so he held up there. Also, too, he had some good recognition as far as knowing what to do and things like that. And so, again, just had a very productive day. Next rookie I wanted to talk about for us here was Kane Medrano. And so Kane Medrano looks like that he took yet another step forward. Talking about just what Dan Quinn said earlier about Jordan McGee being out. And so we've talked about Jordan McGee before and just how he's shown flashes. And then also, too, Coach Joe Wood Jr. had said that they had a package ready for him last season where they wanted to get, I believe, some 3 linebacker sets. And you were thinking, okay, it's going to come to fruition here this year, but he's injured right now. So I don't know what it is, but we'll find out some more about it. But Kane Medrano has taken a step forward. So it looks like that he was in good position from what I'm seeing on coverage. And also, too, he was there as far as just being in position to make plays. He's breaking down and just going into, I think, the right mechanics to make the plays as far as tackling or whatnot. And so Kane Medrano looking very good here and just utilizing his opportunity that he has. And so another just kind of standout here as far as an undrafted rookie for us, Ja'Cory Brooks had a nice catch. It looks like on a 7-on-7 drill. It was a one-handed grab in the end zone. And so Ja'Cory Brooks is a guy that I absolutely love. I think he could definitely be a steal here out of Louisville. And so I believe his quarterback actually got drafted by the Saints. And so Ja'Cory Brooks, definitely an undrafted free agent to note. Another guy that made a play, he's a veteran though, Michael Gallup. And so it looks like that Michael Gallup had a good catch and also showed a good mix of power by kind of running through a DB. So that was good to see. Mike Starcham had a high point catch as well. It looks like he had several of those from what I'm reading for him. And so next, I wanted to go ahead and jump into just really where we had some struggles here. And so it looks like that we did have some struggles. And so going back to the wide receivers here. And so looks like that it was a little bit of a struggle in the 2-minute drill and 2-minute situation there. So maybe guys a little out of position. And so you had Luke McCaffrey, who I think had a solid day today, but I think a lot of Luke McCaffrey playing outside maybe versus inside. Then you had Jalen Lane playing a bit outside as well. And so maybe both of those players a little bit more natural on the inside. But still, you have to step up. There's no Terry McLaurin here. And this is something that this team is going to have to really try to factor in, because there is a chance that maybe Terry McLaurin is not there for week 1. I hope this doesn't happen, but you still got to prepare as if. And so I think that might have been a little little bit of the struggle here today for the wide receivers, especially in money time, which is what I call it, in the 2-minute offense and stuff like that, because we know this team was very good in those moments. And so this is something that they definitely have to sharpen up. We'll see what it looks like when it gets into preseason and the next joint practice. Next thing here, the secondary struggled. And so going back to the secondary here, and so we talked about Trey Amos and just how well he looked. But from what I'm seeing, it looks like Demario Douglas beat Jonathan Jones on a cross. Saw where Mikey Samra still got beat on several routes, it says. And so those were a couple things to note. And we'll talk about just what the Patriots were able to do. And so I do see that Drake May, he went 9 of 12 in the first round of 11 on 11s. You had Joshua Dobbs. He went 13 of 15. And it said that the wide receivers were getting separation on the Washington DBs here at times. And so, I was wondering about this going into the practice, because I'm like, I think that the secondary is the better unit, out of the defense right now. And don't get it mistaken here. I mean, you need to have all pieces or phases of the ball in the defense to play well. But I'm just thinking, okay, we've been hearing a lot about the secondary. And so this is just one joint practice here with the Patriots. And, granted, hey, they had a good day here, or a solid day. Defensively, I'm sure there's things that you want to make some adjustments on. It is a controlled environment out there, with the practice and stuff like that. And so you don't know what would have happened had you been able to get pressures, been able to, actually hit the quarterback and get sacks and stuff like that. The down marker changes, all kinds of scenarios like that. And so, we don't know exactly what it looked like when it came down to it, but the Patriots were able to win a little bit here in the secondary. And so that was of note. The other thing too, the offensive line, just talking about their struggles a little bit. And so it does look like that I'm seeing that the Patriots were able to generate some pressures at times. And so it does mention that Harold Landry and a couple others were able to get through a couple times. And so would those have been sacks? We don't know. Just going back to the point that I just made, you can't hit the quarterback, but still, they were able to get through on some of the pass protection stuff, which I've said this before. I think that this is something that the Commanders are going to have to tighten up this season, because defenses are going to try to attack to try to get Jaden Daniels rattled. Next thing here, as far as the defensive front. And so it looks like that they did a pretty solid job. And so I'm not seeing a whole bunch here as far as the Patriots having a lot of success running the football. And it looks like that they were pretty disciplined as far as just setting the edge and just also too just executing the scheme here. And so you didn't have, it sounds like players that were just going out there and just chasing after highlights and things like that. Because again, when you're talking about defense, it is 11 guys, just on the same sync here. And so that means if you do miss an assignment, you don't set the edge, you don't rush where you're supposed to, or whatever the case may be, that could mean that your defense gets gashed for a lot in the run game. And so I thought that this was actually a great sign to just hear this and see this, that the defense did very good up front. And obviously, again, just going back to the point, this is a joint practice, and so it is a controlled environment, but a good sign here. Let's see if this translates into the preseason opener on Friday. And so anyway, you guys let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking here with the key takeaways from this joint practice here with the Patriots. Are you impressed with what you are hearing about with these rookies? Because like I said, one of the highlights as far as the rookies for me is Kane Madrano. And I just think that Kane Madrano, man, he is building a ton of momentum. And I just think with Coach Joe Wood Jr., who does want to throw some of these 3 linebacker sets out there, Kane Madrano, we already knew that he had the athleticism. And I've said this a couple times. I'm like, man, can he hold up in the box? And so it sounds like that he is comfortable in the box here. And so look, that right there, that tells me that that is a linebacker / safety, whatever you want to put at, that he's going to be just fine coming up, being physical with the ball carriers, and he feels comfortable going against a tight end or matching up with a wide receiver or whatnot and covering them. And so Kane Madrano, definitely impressed with him. Another thing that I want to give some credit to as far as Josh Conley Jr. And so I was impressed with the way that he was able to approach today. Because, like I said before, I just think of Gamer here because this is a guy that steps into, this joint practice. You don't know what that other opposing player is going to give you. And so for him to respond, the play recognition, show his athleticism, I thought that this was a great step for him. And then I loved what I'm hearing here from Trey Amos. It looks like that he is definitely the guy, and it looks like that the Commanders got their starting corner here. And then, some of the other things to note that I just forgot to talk about here before we jump out is that there were a couple skirmishes here at the practice. And so I think it was 2 to 3 where the team did mix it up a little bit. Nothing too serious. One of the highlights out of that is that Coach Vrabel jumps in there and he actually gets bruised or bloodied up a little bit trying to break up one. And so that is something that has been pretty much circling around everywhere. And so that is some of the skirmishes that did happen at the practice. Marshawn Lattimore was in one, and going back to the secondary struggles, he actually did get beat in coverage as well. So I did see that. Marshawn Lattimore did get beat. But for him being out there and him being healthy, him mixing it up, like we know that is the Marshawn Lattimore that we love because he's going to go after you. But now I think for him, it's continuing now to just go out there and get better, put things together. And I just think that last year for him, it was the injuries. And I think that once we get him out there in games, he's going to be just fine. Because remember, too, when you're in practices, you want to go out there and you want to try as much stuff as possible in the practices. I'm not saying that you just go, wild with it, but if you're going to take chances to try to figure out what can and cannot work, you better do it at practices versus at games. So then when you get to the games, you're ready to rock and roll there. And so that is the key takeaways from the Commanders versus the Patriots joint practices. You guys let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking. And we'll be talking a little bit more here about the preseason ramping up here for the Washington Commanders because they are going to be off tomorrow. Then they have the game Friday. And so we'll be previewing the game, and then we will have the post game as well. And so, as I always say, go Commanders, and I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.